Before you spend $30, $35, or almost $40,000 on a new Mazda CX-5, there is something you should know. Mazda sold more than 136,000 CX-5s in the United States in 2025. And since the model arrived in 2012, Americans have bought more than 1.6 million of them. That is an enormous number for a brand that does not have Toyota's scale, Honda's dealer footprint, or a lineup filled with giant pickup trucks. So clearly, Mazda has been doing something right. But the all-new 2026 CX-5 changes the formula in several important ways. And depending on what you actually want from a compact SUV, some of those changes may make you want one immediately, and others may send you straight toward a Toyota RAV4 or Honda CR-V. Today on VH Car, we are not going to tell you the CX-5 is perfect because it has attractive headlights and soft material on the dashboard. We are going to look at what it is actually like as an American daily driver, what you get for the money, what Mazda improved, what it still gets wrong, how it compares with the CR-V and RAV4, and most importantly, whether you should actually buy one. Because there is nothing worse than watching 20 reviews that call a vehicle premium, buying it, and discovering 3 months later that the thing you actually cared about was the one thing nobody mentioned. The first major change is size. The 2026 CX-5 is a completely new third-generation model, and Mazda stretched the wheelbase to 110 inches while increasing rear seat and cargo space. That matters because one of the biggest criticisms of the previous CX-5 was never the way it drove. It was the fact that some rivals simply gave families more room. The old CX-5 could feel surprisingly tight behind a tall front seat passenger, especially next to something like a CR-V. Mazda clearly understood the message. The new vehicle retains the familiar CX-5 shape, but the proportions are larger, and the cabin is intended to be more useful without turning the car into another oversized SUV that feels like it needs permission from airport ground control to park. And this is where the CX-5 begins making sense for a very wide American audience. If you live around Denver, Seattle, Boston, Minneapolis, or anywhere that regularly deals with rain, snow, cold weather, or slippery roads, every 2026 CX-5 comes standard with Mazda's iActive all-wheel drive. You do not have to move up several trim levels just to get power going to all 4 wheels. Mazda also includes normal, sport, and off-road drive modes, and the latest version of G Vectoring Control Plus works with an electronic brake limited slip differential to help manage traction. That does not turn the CX-5 into a Jeep Wrangler, and I strongly recommend not discovering this by driving directly into a forest. But it gives the vehicle useful everyday capability without requiring an off-road appearance package. The catch is under the hood. At launch, every 2026 CX-5 uses a naturally aspirated 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, making 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque, paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission. And yes, you heard that correctly, 6 speeds. In an era when manufacturers are using 8-speed, 9-speed, 10-speed, CVT, hybrid eCVT, dual clutch, and transmissions that appear to have been designed during a mathematics competition, Mazda has apparently looked at its 6-speed automatic and said, "Still works." There is something refreshing about that simplicity. The engine does not use a turbocharger, and the transmission is a conventional automatic rather than a CVT. For buyers who dislike the elastic sensation some continuously variable transmissions can produce, that alone may be appealing. The throttle response feels predictable. The transmission changes actual gears, and the basic drivetrain is familiar Mazda engineering rather than an entirely experimental setup. But 187 horsepower is not a lot anymore. The 2026 Honda CR-V's standard turbocharged engine produces 190 horsepower, while the CR-V hybrid makes 204 total system horsepower. Toyota has moved the 2026 RAV4 into an electrified lineup, with the base LE carrying a $31,900 starting MSRP and Toyota advertising an estimated 47 mm city and 40 mm highway for that version. Honda's CR-V starts at $30,920, while the Sport Hybrid begins at $35,630. Meanwhile, Mazda's CX-5 begins at $29,990 with AWD already included. That means the Mazda immediately presents you with a very interesting trade-off. The CX-5 is cheaper to enter than both of those rivals at current published starting prices, and Mazda gives you standard AWD. But Toyota gives you hybrid efficiency from the bottom of the RAV4 lineup, and Honda gives you the option of a 204 horsepower hybrid system. If your commute involves 50 miles every day around Los Angeles, Dallas, Atlanta, Orlando, or another city where you spend significant time in traffic, fuel economy can matter a lot more than steering feel. And this brings us to the first CTA. Tell us in the comments what matters more to you in a compact SUV: better driving feel and standard AWD, or maximum fuel economy? And tell us what you are driving right now, because I want to see how many people watching this are coming from a RAV4, CR-V, older CX-5, or something completely different. Now we need to talk about the reason people keep buying the Mazda, even when competitors occasionally look better on a spreadsheet. The way it feels from the driver's seat. Mazda has built much of its reputation around making ordinary vehicles feel slightly less ordinary. The CX-5 is not a sports car, and anyone calling a 187 horsepower compact crossover a sports car has probably spent too much time reading dealership brochures. But Mazda pays unusual attention to steering response, body control, seating position, brake feel, and how quickly the vehicle responds to driver inputs. For 2026, Mazda revised the suspension with new dampers, a new wheel and tire setup, and updated chassis control software. This matters because most compact SUVs are not actually bad anymore. The segment has become so competitive that even an average vehicle can be comfortable, safe, efficient, and filled with technology. The question is, what gives one of them personality? The CR-V makes an extremely strong case for space and practicality. The RAV4 makes an extremely strong case for efficiency and electrification. The CX-5 tries to make the argument that you should actually enjoy the 20 minutes between your house and the grocery store. And depending on the buyer, that works. The interior also moves the CX-5 much closer to what buyers now expect from a modern crossover. Mazda introduced its largest touchscreen yet in the CX-5, along with Google built-in technology and Gemini AI assistant functionality. That means the vehicle is moving away from the older Mazda philosophy, where the center screen sometimes felt like something you were expected to operate using a rotary controller, while politely refusing to touch it. The new system is much more integrated into the modern Google ecosystem. Some Mazda fans may actually miss the old approach. Physical controls and rotary interfaces can be easier to operate while driving because you develop muscle memory. Touchscreens give manufacturers an enormous amount of flexibility, but they also create the exciting experience of searching through menus while trying to remember where someone moved the setting you used yesterday. Still, for mainstream buyers, the updated interface was necessary. The trim structure is also straightforward. Mazda lists the 2026 CX-5 2.5S at $29,990, Select at $31,990, Preferred at $34,250, Premium at $36,900, and Premium Plus at $38,990 before destination and other applicable charges. So the sweet spot is probably somewhere in the middle, rather than automatically jumping to the most expensive version. That is another mistake buyers make constantly. They walk into a dealership because the advertisement says the vehicle starts under $30,000. 40 minutes later, they are staring at a nearly $40,000 version because it has different wheels, nicer seats, additional technology, and some feature they had never heard of until the salesperson explained why civilization may collapse without it. The Preferred or Premium is likely where many buyers should spend the most time comparing equipment against price. And if you are shopping in a place like Chicago, Denver, Boston, Seattle, or upstate New York, Standard AWD becomes particularly valuable because you are not paying another substantial amount just to add it. If you live in Phoenix or Southern California and almost never encounter poor weather, the value equation changes. You are carrying the cost, weight, and mechanical complexity of AWD, whether you need it or not. That is why there is no universal yes or no answer to whether the CX-5 is worth buying. But there is one major reason I would tell some buyers to wait. Mazda has already confirmed that the new CX-5 launches with the 2.5-liter gasoline engine, while the company has been developing further electrified powertrain plans for the model. At the same time, Toyota is already selling the 2026 RAV4 around hybrid and plug-in hybrid powertrains, and Honda's CR-V hybrid is already established in the market. So if fuel economy is your highest priority, buying the first version of the new CX-5 may not be the obvious move. If driving feel, standard AWD, styling, a traditional automatic transmission, and a sub-$30,000 starting MSRP matter more to you, the Mazda suddenly becomes very difficult to ignore. And we have not even reached the most important questions yet: long-term ownership, safety, whether the new technology is actually an improvement, how the CX-5 compares with a CR-V hybrid after several years of fuel costs, and who should absolutely avoid buying this Mazda. That is where Part 2 gets much more interesting. Now we get to the part that actually determines whether the 2026 Mazda CX-5 deserves your money, because attractive styling and good steering are not enough when you are planning to keep a vehicle for 5, 7, or 10 years. The first thing that deserves attention is safety. And this is one area where Mazda has done an unusually strong job. The 2026 CX-5 received the IAHS Top Safety Pick Plus Award, the highest award available from the Institute. And Mazda equipped every trim with a long list of standard driver assistance systems rather than hiding the important equipment behind the most expensive package. News, Mazdausa.com. Standard equipment includes features such as rear automatic emergency braking, rear cross-traffic braking, emergency lane keeping, blind spot assistance, traffic sign recognition, radar cruise control with speed limit assistance, and several systems designed to detect potential conflicts with other vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcycles. Higher trims can add even more assistance technology, including enhanced camera functionality. News, Mazdausa.com. That matters because safety packages are one of those things people rarely get excited about in the dealership. Nobody walks into a showroom, points at rear automatic braking, and says, "That is the reason I am emotionally attached to this vehicle." But 6 months later, when a car suddenly appears behind you in a crowded parking lot, those systems become considerably more interesting. And here is our second CTA. If you are actually considering a CX-5, hit the like button and subscribe to VHCar, because we are going to keep doing reviews based on the things that matter after the test drive is over, not just how good the vehicle looks under dealership lighting. Now let us talk about practicality, because this is where Honda still creates problems for Mazda. The CR-V remains one of the strongest choices in the segment if maximum interior space is near the top of your list. Honda lists up to 39.3 cubic feet of cargo space behind the second row in certain 2026 CR-V configurations, and up to 76.5 cubic feet with the rear seats folded. It also offers more than 100 cubic feet of passenger volume depending on trim. Automobiles.honda.com. The new CX-5 is larger and more practical than the previous generation, so the gap is not as frustrating as it once was. But if you regularly carry large strollers, several suitcases, sports equipment, dogs, children, or enough Costco purchases to prepare for the collapse of civilization, I would still physically compare the cargo areas before signing anything. Do not buy dimensions on a website. Bring the stroller. Bring the child seat. Bring the golf clubs. Bring whatever you actually carry. The salesperson may look confused, but that is considerably cheaper than discovering the problem after the paperwork is finished. Then we reach fuel economy, and this is probably the CX-5's biggest strategic weakness right now. The Honda CR-V Hybrid can achieve EPA ratings as high as 43 in Tilarg City and 36 highway in front-wheel drive form, while AWD hybrid versions can still reach around 40 city and 34 highway depending on trim. Toyota's redesigned 2026 RAV4 advertises fuel economy, reaching an estimated 47 mpg city and 40 highway in its most efficient configuration. Automobiles.honda.com, Toyota.com. That changes the ownership calculation. Imagine two people buying compact SUVs at the same time. One drives 7,000 miles per year. The other drives 20,000 dollars. The first buyer may barely care about the difference in fuel economy. The second buyer absolutely should. If you live in Texas and regularly drive between suburbs and a major city, or you spend hours commuting through Southern California, Atlanta, Houston, Orlando, or Phoenix, the hybrid competitors can potentially recover some of their higher purchase price through lower fuel consumption over time. The Mazda fights back with standard AWD, a conventional automatic transmission, a naturally aspirated engine, and a lower entry price than some hybrid alternatives. That is a very different philosophy. Mazda is essentially saying, here is a traditional gasoline crossover that drives well, has AWD included, and does not force you into a hybrid system. Toyota is saying, why are we still discussing a non-hybrid compact SUV in 2026? And Honda sits somewhere between them. Because you can still buy a conventional CR-V or step into the hybrid. None of those approaches is automatically correct. Your annual mileage decides a lot. Now we need to discuss reliability, because this is where people usually want a simple answer that does not exist. The CX-5's launch engine is not radically exotic. Mazda is using a naturally aspirated 2.5-liter four-cylinder with a traditional 6-speed automatic. From a design perspective, that is a relatively conventional drivetrain compared with some turbocharged or hybrid alternatives. But the 2026 CX-5 itself is a new generation, with a new body, new electronics, a redesigned infotainment system, and expanded driver assistance technology. And that means early buyers are still early buyers. The engine may be familiar, but the entire vehicle is not. This is something I would consider if you are the type of person who keeps a car for 10 years and hates unexpected dealership visits more than you enjoy having the newest model. Sometimes, the smartest new car purchase is buying a vehicle in its second or third production year, after the manufacturer has had time to correct small software issues, manufacturing quirks, or components that did not behave exactly as expected in the real world. That does not mean the 2026 CX-5 is unreliable. It means we do not yet have years of real-world data on this specific generation. There is an important difference. The new technology also deserves a test drive before you buy. Mazda now offers 12.9-inch and available 15.6-inch infotainment displays with Google built in, and several vehicle functions can be controlled through the touchscreen or voice commands. News, Mazdausa.com. Some people will love this. Others will sit in the vehicle, look for a physical button that no longer exists, and quietly begin reconsidering their life choices. This is exactly why I would never recommend buying the CX-5 without spending real time inside it first. Do not drive it around the dealership for 6 minutes. Connect your phone. Adjust the climate control. Change the audio. Use navigation. Move through the menus. Sit in the back. Fold the seats. Park. Reverse it. Because the vehicle you interact with every day is not the horsepower number. It is the controls. Now we reach the most important question. Who should actually buy this car? Buy the CX-5 if you want a compact SUV that feels more responsive than the average crossover. You appreciate a conventional automatic transmission. You want standard AWD without immediately moving into an expensive trim, and you care about interior design and driving character almost as much as cargo volume and fuel economy. It makes especially strong sense if you live somewhere with variable weather and actually benefit from AWD. Think Colorado, Washington, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, or parts of New York. It also makes sense for someone who simply does not want a hybrid. Not everyone does. Some buyers want the best possible MPG. Others want a familiar gasoline drivetrain and would rather accept higher fuel consumption in exchange for simplicity and a more traditional driving experience. But who should skip it? If fuel economy is your #1 priority, I would look very seriously at the RAV4 and CR-V hybrid before signing for a CX-5. If cargo space is your highest priority, I would compare the CR-V carefully. If you want serious acceleration, 187 horsepower may leave you disappointed, especially if you are coming from something turbocharged. And if you already own a recent previous generation CX-5 that is paid off, reliable, and doing everything you need, upgrading simply because the new screen is larger may be one of the most expensive ways imaginable to obtain a larger screen. Now here is our third and final CTA. Tell us in the comments whether you would buy the new CX-5, the Honda CR-V, or the Toyota RAV4. And if you already own a CX-5, tell everyone watching what your ownership experience has actually been like, because real owners often reveal things that spec sheets never do. So, should you buy the 2026 Mazda CX-5? My answer is yes, but not automatically. If you want an engaging compact SUV with standard AWD, strong safety equipment, attractive design, a conventional drivetrain, and pricing that begins below several major competitors, the CX-5 remains one of the most interesting choices in the segment. But if your priorities are maximum fuel economy, maximum cargo room, or proven long-term data from this exact generation, there are stronger arguments elsewhere. For some buyers, the CR-V is the smarter appliance. For others, the RAV4 is the smarter efficiency play. The Mazda is the choice for someone who wants practicality without completely surrendering the idea that driving should still feel like something. And that is exactly why you should not buy the CX-5 until you watch a comparison like this. Because the CX-5 is a very good SUV, it is just not automatically the best SUV for you.